So, I would like to tell you about a badass woman of the American Revolution who we don't actually know if she was a real person, as it's hard to explain her story from fact and folklore. Her name is Nancy Hart, and she's a freedom fighter. And here, we'll be talking about the card version of her in Story of America Cards The Revolution. Nancy Morgan Hart, also known as just Nancy Hart, was a rebel heroine of the American Revolutionary War. She is noted for exploits against loyalists in the northeast backcountry of Georgia. She is characterized as being a tough and resourceful frontier woman who repeatedly outsmarted Tory soldiers, those being loyalists, and killing some too. A lot of stories about her are unsupported mostly by contemporary documentation, and so because of this, it has been hard for researchers to distinguish fact from folklore. An American patriot who could handle a rifle as well as any man, Nancy Morgan Hart won fame for her exploits during the Revolution. Born Nancy Morgan around 1735, she may have been related to Daniel Boone through her mother's side of the family. Guess that might explain why she's good at a rifle. And General Daniel Morgan, another hero of the Revolution. While still a teenager, she met and married a Virginian man named Benjamin Hart, and together they followed the frontier into South Carolina, then Georgia. Staunch supporters of the revolution against British rule, the Harts became part of the Patriot majority of Georgia. Nancy Hart, reportedly an illiterate woman, stood close to 6 feet, 1.8 centimeters tall, and was very sturdy. Unafraid of the Tories, British sympathizers who were all around her, she would go out on scouting expeditions, dressed as a man in order to obtain information more easily. She is best remembered, however, for an encounter with a group of Tories who were in pursuit of an escaping patriot. The story involves some 5 or 6 Tories who entered her home one day while pursuing the suspect. They demanded that she prepare a meal for them, and while she was doing so, she gave them plenty of whiskey to drink. After the Tories had fallen asleep in a drunken spiral, she sent her daughter, Suki, who was only 12 years old, to warn her father about the trouble at home. Meanwhile, Nancy began moving quietly about the room, collecting the rifles the men had put down while they were drinking. When one of the Tories realized what Nancy was doing, he tried to attack her. She was an excellent shot and killed him instantly. She then held off the others until her husband arrived with a group of patriot villagers. The Tories were summarily hanged. Nancy Hart had 8 children in all, and after the Revolution she moved with her large family to Brunswick, Georgia. When her husband died, she resettled in Clark County, Georgia, and then in Kentucky, where she died in 1830. Nancy Hart's exploits were handed down by oral tradition of Board River Country, Georgia, but they were not recorded until after the Revolution. Much of what is known about her cannot be verified in written accounts before 1848, when Elizabeth Elliot published her volume, Woman of the Revolution. In it, Elliot included information she had gathered from old-timers in Georgia who had heard about the events involving Aunt Nancy from their grandparents. It is true that Nancy Morgan Hart did exist as an actual person during this time. She may have done some of these things for patriots during the war. However, since some stuff about Nancy appears to be lost to time, and it's hard to determine from fact and fiction to who she was in real life is unknown. It is thanks to people like Elizabeth Elliot and that we have close information from people who were alive around the same time as Nancy to remember her and then spread it to their children and grandkids, to which Nancy and other women who were involved in the revolution to not be forgotten. Same goes for women in previous wars or the Civil War, for example. Another fact that can point to Nancy Hart's existence would be in the experiment site of Hart's Frontier Cabin, which is along the River Road in the Herbert country. The Daughters of the American Revolution erected a replica cabin in the early 20th century, made with chimney stones recovered from the site of the original cabin, which had soon stood on the crest of a large hill overlooking Wahashi Creek. In Georgia, there are places that memorize Nancy Hart. One is Hart County, located north of Elbert Country. There is also a county seat named Hartwell after her. Another is that during the American Civil War, a group of women in LaGrange, Georgia, founded an all-female militia company, which they named the Nancy Harts, to defend the town from the Union Army. Most of the men of fighting age have been drawn off to war. In the 20th century, nearby Lake Hartwell and Hartwell Dam, Hart State Park, and the Nancy Hart Highway, Georgia Route 77, commemorate the legendary woman. In 1997, Hart was introduced into Georgia Woman of Achievement. And that's all on Nancy Hart from Story of America cards and other information I found about her. I hope you enjoy learning about her because she sounds like a tough woman. Even if some information on her is not true or not, the actual Nancy Hart. But this is where I'll end, and I'll see you next time in my other stuff I do.